Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar about teen vaping. My name is Tammy Sander. I do communications for the Hamilton County Health Department, and I'm joined tonight by a pair of health experts who are going to talk to us about vaping, what it is, how we can tell whether or not our children are vaping, and if they are, what kind of help that we might be able to get for them. Tonight's webinar is the 11th in a series of monthly webinars that we kicked off this year, really geared towards children's health. We've hosted an array of topics, everything from internet safety to back to school vaccinations, poison prevention, backpack safety. These webinars are really just a larger effort on our part to reach out to parents and caregivers and educators so they can make more informed decisions about the health of their kiddos. We only have one more webinar left. That's in December. And at the end of this webinar, we'll talk about what that is and give you directions on how you can register for that if you're interested in attending that one too. But first, let me start by introducing tonight's panel. Jim Ginder is a health education specialist at the Hamilton County Health Department. In addition to teaching students in all of our Hamilton County schools, Jim is also a certified health worker, an EMS instructor, and a certified psychological autopsy investigator. Stacy Collins is the executive director of Breathe Easy Hamilton County. That's a public health agency with the mission to promote tobacco-free living and ensure smoke-free air within Hamilton County. They do that a lot through education, events like this evening, as well as advocacy. And in fact, it's a mission that's really near and dear to Stacy's heart because she herself is a vocalist and a pulmonary embolism survivor. So here's our agenda for the evening. We're going to learn about e-cigarettes, or vapes, as the kids call them, how they work, why it's so very dangerous for young people to get started. Unfortunately, this habit can very quickly turn into an addiction, and it's pretty easy to cover up if you know what you're doing. So as a parent, it can be incredibly difficult to tell if your child is vaping or not. We're going to give you some telltale signs to help you figure that out, as well as tips for helping your kids quit, which turns out isn't very easy. So Jim, let's start with you. The most obvious question, what is an e-cigarette? How do they work?
Sure, awesome. And thank you all for hanging out with us today. So, what's really scary is e-cigarettes have been around since around 2014. And we've actually started seeing more and more of our adolescents using this product as well too. And what our e-cigarettes are is they come in different shapes, different colors, and different flavors. And what they are they're battery operated devices that heat a liquid, then they produce an aerosol. And what they usually do is then they smoke that or they inhale that aerosol as well too. And something that a lot of people don't understand, that all of our e-cigarettes or vapes out there do have nicotine in it. And I hear a lot of students tell me that there's no way that these vapes do have nicotine in it. But of course they do, because that's how the manufacturers of our e-cigarettes want everyone to become addicted to that product, is with that nicotine level as well too. And as I mentioned, these vapes come in all different flavors. I will tell you, I do a lot of education, as Tammy was talking about, in the schools. And usually my high school and middle school students say bubblegum, cotton candy. Those are some of the favorite flavors that are out there as well too. So we have to be really careful if you notice a weird flavor coming from your child's bedroom, or if they come home and they smell like cotton candy, and you know that they're not smoking, that they're not eating cotton candy. That's a great kind of opportunity to say, hey, you know what's going on? So, and let's talk a little bit about some of the different names, because there's hundreds of different names for e-cigarettes out there. So talk about e-cigs, vapes, e-cigarettes. Those are smaller versions. The tank system, that's probably the one that you're familiar with. And if you look under the picture, the graphic where it says other common names, that's what that tank system is. And usually our adolescents don't do that because it's too big and it's really hard to find. So usually people who are over the age of 21 are the ones that use that tank system as well. We talk about hookah pens. Hookah is a form of tobacco, and at one of the schools I do some stuff with, it is kind of the rite of passion when students at this specific school turn 18 that they go to a hookah bar. And hookah is a very strong tobacco product, and there's no filter. So our typical cigarettes have a filter with them. With hookah, they're getting 100% of all of those carcinogens and all those chemicals in that hookah as well too. And also a lot of hookah is also flavored as well too. So besides those chemicals in the tobacco product or the hookah, they're also getting the flavor of like peach or strawberry or whatever chemical flavor they've added to it as well too. We also talk about mods, and that's a pretty common one that we see in the school, like Mr. Fogg. That would be a great example of that one as well too. Dripping is very interesting. I don't see very many students talk about that. That's where they undo the vape and they just take some of the e-liquid and drip it on the coils, and it becomes an aerosol, and they go ahead and they breathe it in as well too. Same thing with waxing. And something you need to also understand that all these products, besides being used for e-cigarettes, can also be used for smoking marijuana or other type of drugs as well too. So that's something you kind of need to keep in mind with as well too. And this just kind of gives you, as I mentioned earlier, kind of what an e-cigarette looks like. And again, there's hundreds of different models, but this is kind of like the generic version of how an e-cigarette works. So as you see at the very bottom, there's the battery, right? And something that a lot of people don't know, that there's a possibility that these e-cigarettes will explode. And we've got some situations, and when I present about e-cigarettes in the schools, I show the middle school and high school kids some pictures of individuals that have been vaping and the vape actually exploded in their mouth as well too. Then also we have the on button. So what happens is the person either buys a pre-filled e-cigarette, or this one is one that can be filled. So let's say they buy the pre-filled one. So they turn it on, the battery gets hot. Inside the e-cigarette, there's coils. And what happens is once the battery turns on, the coils get hot, then the coils turn that liquid into a vapor as well too, or to an aerosol. And that's how they smoke it as well too. Something else that a lot of people don't understand is oral herpes can also be transmitted through vaping if people are sharing vapes with each other as well too.
So, Stacy, there are literally hundreds of different types of vapes out there, and it's clear the manufacturers are going to great efforts to help these kids, like make them in such a way that they're easily disguised. So, for parents who may not be familiar with these e-cigarettes, tell us kind of what we're looking for in terms of shape, size.
Right. So we're seeing really anything. We're seeing a lot of cigarette lookalikes. Um, we are seeing pens, the pod kits, which was is this yellow one here in the middle of the screen. That's gonna, like Jim said, that's gonna be your most common one that you see. Um, some are refillable, so you would buy a bottle of the juice, the liquid, and refill your device. Some are disposable, which then of course creates a whole other issue because we have that battery to dispose of, which is really difficult in our landfills and with the different ways that we're disposing of that. That was a big conversation at a meeting I just had. Even the state is really at a loss at the best way to really dispose of those safely for our earth. So we are seeing vapes all shapes and sizes, and I mean obviously every single picture on here is going to appeal to a young kid, right? Maybe not the pagers because they probably don't know what that is anymore, but obviously the Game Boy, we have Bart Simpson over here. What I just learned about is if we remember maybe from the 90s, early 2000s, there's the Tamagotchis where it's the little digital pet, and you log on and you feed him and you care for him and he grows and you get points. They've installed that on a vape, and so every time you take a hit, it grows your little pet, and that just really pushes kids to keep wanting to hit that vape. It's a good incentive for them. We see them looking like Apple Watches. We see them looking like a keychain, a car starter. Um, it's just crazy. So our most commonly used brands, probably parents are going to be most familiar with the word Juul. That is the brand that first hit the markets back in the mid 2010s. Um, It was taken off of the market in 2022 because of a lawsuit. However, that just lapsed this summer. So you are seeing the Juuls back in the markets. The other really big one with the kids are the Mr. Fogg there on the bottom left, and then the Elf bar.
All right, Jim, you spend a ton of time in our schools. How common is vaping?
Sure. What's interesting is one of the questions I ask the students is, let's say I have a room of 30 kids, right? High school and middle school. And I ask them how many of them know somebody who vapes, and probably 80 to 90% raise their hands. And I say, okay, well, then I have them put their hands down. Then I say, how many of your friends vape? And what's really sad, those people that raise their hands again as well too. So we see lots of our adolescents vaping or know people who vape as well too. And we know with e-cigarettes that it's the most common used tobacco product among our youth as well too. And what's interesting is there's a youth risk behavior assessment that was done through the US. And it's interesting that a lot of people think that males vape more. It's actually females vape more than guys do, which is kind of interesting to me as well too. And you can see from the data, 3.5 middle school students currently use e-cigarettes as well too. And then that's 7.8% of high school students. And one of the big issues that we have to think about is addiction. And that's one of the big reasons why we have a hard time with these individuals to get them, to encourage them to stop, just because the addiction is so strong with them. And because somebody who starts vaping, it's kind of the same addiction as somebody who is abusing cocaine as well too. So that's something that we really have to fight with as well too.
Okay, so Stacy, we're looking at this graph, and there's good news here, but then that's a bit of a catch 22. Explain what we're looking at.
Yeah, so we're seeing the cigarette use trend down, which is great, right? In our teens, in our youth. Cigarettes are seen as tacky, dirty, disgusting. They're also getting more and more expensive, right? With tax increases and just, everything's getting more expensive. And obviously the tobacco industry is going to see that as well. They're also more difficult to purchase for our high schoolers, our youth. Where on the flip side, we're not seeing that with our e-cigarettes, our vape use. Those can be purchased online without any age ID verification, which makes it so much easier for these kids to get them. It's a lot more normalized as well because it is really considered a healthier option. And if we think about vapes have been on the market for right at 10 years, so those teenagers that were vaping are now starting to have kids, right? And so if they continue to vape in the home, then that makes those products more accessible and that makes the habit more normalized amongst these kids.
Yeah, and talk about, I mean, you mentioned that some people consider this as safer than smoking cigarettes because it doesn't have tobacco, but
Mhm.
it's really no more safe.
Absolutely. So when the Juuls hit the market, they were originally marketed as a cessation device, something for people to use to help them quit smoking cigarettes. And in theory, that probably could be very useful. I just returned from a trip from the UK and did some studying while I was over there, and learned that they limit the amount of nicotine that are in their devices. So they really are credibly a cessation device. However, the United States, it's completely unregulated over here, and a vape could contain as much nicotine as a carton of cigarettes. So that's 20 packs of cigarettes that you'd be smoking in one little device, and that's just completely harmful and obviously much more addictive, as we see here, than heroin and cocaine, and affects those, the developing frontal lobes of the brains and everything else that comes along with substance abuse addiction.
Yeah, and you mentioned that it can lead to other things.
Yeah, it's that normalization, that mental normalization of, well, I vape And then at the party, I try the vape with marijuana in it. And then the next month, I try the vape with maybe something harder in it because everything has been fine leading up to this point. And then I hate to use the phrase because it sounds so cliche, but it's such a gateway. And they really aren't safer than smoking the cigarettes in many ways. And like it says, it primes that brain for that addiction.
All right. So Jim, why are our kids vaping? I guess that's the what that you talk to them about this. What's the allure?
Right. You know, what's interesting is when I bring this up to the high school, middle school students, one of the things that they say is peer pressure is one, to fit in with their friends as well too. Also because their boredom, that's another one. And we know from my experiences working in the school system is because of COVID, because mom and dad or whoever was at work and they didn't have anything to do, or they weren't with their friends, so they would get on a social media site and find a plug, and a plug is a person who would bring that product to them as well too. And some other the reasons why our adolescents are vaping, because again, the advertisement things with social media, TikTok is a great example. I mean, you ask a middle school and high school kid, they can tell you everything that you ever want to know about TikTok as well too. And also a lot of the students say, as I mentioned earlier, excuse me, those flavors. The blueberry is a big one. The cotton candy is another one. Raspberry. There's a one that's out there that's birthday cake as well too. But what they don't understand is they're getting those flavors in their lung as well too. As we also talked about that social influence as well, their friends, maybe older siblings as well too. And a lot of times I will tell you from my experiences is it's really difficult to educate kids when their parents are doing it as well too, and their parents are actually providing them that vape as well, or maybe an older sibling or another family member is providing it because they are misinformed about their about vaping. So now they're addicted, and it's as we'll talk about in just a second, it's really hard to stop. Then also we talk about that nicotine as well too. So those are things we kind of think about.
Yeah, and as Stacy alluded to, they're not difficult to purchase, but you do need to be 21 to purchase them.
Correct. Right. Here in Indiana, you have to be 21 to even be in a vape store, a tobacco store, and you cannot have them on you. That includes the product, the vape itself, and the vape juice.
Stacy, we were talking a couple days ago. You were telling an interesting story about a young woman who met up with somebody to go get a vape. Tell us
Oh my
about some of these
goodness.
stories that you hear
So
because they're kind of alarming.
yeah, so the kids are meeting people through social media channels and connecting in real life with these people to get their products. And we had a situation recently where a young woman, this was during COVID lockdown, snuck out of her home, Ubered to a local park in the middle of the night, met up with her dealer, and Ubered home. And thank God that's all that happened, right? Because your brain can jump to much worse things with a young woman meeting up with someone, a stranger in the park in the middle of the night. Um, I've heard of teens where they will leave a box outside of their bedroom window for their person to leave their products in, like a little mailbox right there at your bedroom window, for your vapes to be dropped off. These dealers will go above and beyond to keep their customers hooked.
Yeah, and talk to you about what Breathe Easy does in terms of doing just spot inspections around town because you found that it is very easy for these kids to purchase them.
Yeah, we do. We partner with local law enforcement and then also some nursing students to do a survey of all of the retailers in the area and also kind of a sting operation, if you will, with excise. And I know personally a dear friend of mine followed her child, her 16-year-old, to a vape store and watched her purchase something unbeknownst to the child, watched her purchase something, and then Mama Bear barged in and stopped the sale and turned them into excise, but they're still operating. I drive past them every day.
So Jim, and I can attest to this. I know Stacy, you have a high schooler too here in Hamilton County.
Mhm.
My daughter will come home and tell me that she had to use the restroom in the middle of the day, and then it smells like weed. Um, and and I think I'm surprised when I ask her who vapes. And to your point, a lot of girls, but every kind of kid, yes? When we
Yeah.
think of cliques and groups in high school, like, it's not safe to assume your child's not the one doing it.
Yeah, it's no longer the stoners or the burnouts, from our youth. It's crosses all divides, socioeconomic, background, the different cliques, the clubs, the athletes. I am hearing a lot of coaches across Hamilton County have their own zero tolerance policy, regardless of what the school's policy is. If you are caught with a substance, you're off the team because that affects your performance, which is going to affect the whole team. And so it's straight from the very beginning. If you're caught, you're out.
All right. So Stacy, you did mention that oh yeah, that's actually a great segue. Let's talk about what's happening in the schools because they are trying to crack down. Yes, Jim?
Yes, yes, they are. So when you talk about the programs in the schools, there each school has their own vaping policy and procedure as well too. So kind of the goal is not to do suspension or have them expelled. Their goal is to try and work on the addiction as well too, and to help these students understand that hey, this is a big issue and we need to help you with this as well too. And then one of the things that one of the school, I should say, many of the schools are doing is they're installing vape detectors in the bathroom. And this is not a punitive a way to get the kids in trouble. It is a way to notify administration that stuff is going on, right? So, like a great example is you can see the picture, it looks like a smoke detector. And let's say a student is vaping in the bathroom and the vape detector picks it up. Then usually what happens is a message instantaneously goes to one of the deans or the administrator and they go to that bathroom as well too. They escort the student to the dean's office and there's a process that they go to. And again, their goal is not so much punitive. Their goal is what can we do to help the student break this habit as well too. And you can see that up there above where the kind of like the Christmas thing is. This is how many vapes were collected first semester at one of our local high schools as well too. And I will tell you personally, one of the high schools has given me a big freezer bag. Stacy, what was it? It was a gallon-sized bag that you gave me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Stacy gave me this gallon-sized bag, and one of the schools brought over a big box of vapes that they have confiscated from their students, and it filled that whole gallon-size freezer bag as well too. And I hate to say this, but kids are getting very smarter about our vaping. And the reason why it's kind of like that cat and mouse game, how they can hide it so they don't get caught. So I think that's something that we need to think about as well too, is that doing vaping at school is very common because again, they've got that addiction. Because remember, as the day goes on, that nicotine level decreases and their brain's like, oh my gosh, I need to hit my vape again. So I'm releasing that dopamine and serotonin. So they're going to do anything they can to be able to vape at school as well too. And Tammy, it's interesting. Tammy just mentioned something about her daughter. I was actually at a school a few weeks ago and I went in to wash my hands and somebody was smoking marijuana in the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
And that is just, for further explanation, that's taking a vape pen and instead of filling it with vape, they're filling it with
liquid marijuana. Yeah.
liquid marijuana. Okay.
Or another product like fentanyl or heroin or and here's something that a lot of parents don't understand is that even some people think marijuana is safe. That's a different discussion, but we always need to understand what else is that marijuana mixed with as well too. So that's something that even our sometimes our students who vape may mix marijuana in with their vape juice as well too, or their e-liquid. So that's something we also need to think about as well.
All right. So Stacy, we talked about the fact that some smokers have used e-cigarettes to try to quit smoking, but I think the important thing to know is it's just not safe. It's not
It is
safe.
not. No. And it's going to affect every system and every organ of your body, especially the longer you do it. We're seeing, we've seen historically when people quit smoking cigarettes, your body will start to heal a little bit after, an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year. We're seeing a lot of kind of that regenerating of the body. The chemicals in the vapes are so dangerous and so, destructive that we're not seeing that. To go back to the vape detectors, I just learned of a case where the cleaning supplies that the janitors were using at the school were triggering the vape detectors, which really makes your brain connect to,
Oh
are
my
those
gosh.
chemicals, is that what we're ingesting? That's what we're ingesting. I like to tell the high schoolers when I talk to them, who's done biology, who's done, who's cut up a mouse or a frog or whatever, that liquid that they're sitting in, that formaldehyde, and that what they embalm your body with when you die, that's what you're ingesting. That's what you're inhaling when you're vaping. Or the hairspray, Tammy and I, sorry, Jim, but Tammy and I probably have used many bottles of hairspray in our lives. And, they're no longer allowed to sell the good stuff because of the hole in the ozone layer, right? But that is also what we're ingesting when we vape is the hairspray chemicals as well.
Yeah, this is a great graphic. Run us through this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got the nicotine, we've got those compounds and those chemicals, like the cleaning supplies. We've got the flavorings. I mean, I think about, the red dye number 4 and all the artificial flavorings that are just in our foods, and that's just going straight to our body, our tummies, right? Whereas all of this stuff is being soaked into the blood, in the lungs, through the skin. Those metals, I mean, who among us hasn't maybe chewed a pen or a pencil in their lifetime, right? And you think about if they're tapping that vape against their teeth, little bits of those metals are flaking off, and then of course it's obviously going to affect your teeth, right? We're going to see cracks and chips on your teeth as well.
And then it gets even worse. These pictures are so gross.
This is when we start to lose them in class, isn't it, Jim?
Yes, very much so.
Oh my goodness. Is this you? So the popcorn lung, that goes back. We've heard of that for years, right? That wet lung, we're seeing collapsed lungs where you have to have your lung, kind of, Jim, you might speak better on this, but they basically have to reinflate your lung, right?
Right. Yeah,
Pierce you through the, yeah.
they put a chest tube in to suck the air out.
We're also seeing other things other than just the systems of your body. I mean, if you think about, these are electronics, and what do electronics do? They can catch on fire. So we can see jaws blown off, we can see legs blown off. We've seen houses and cars burned down because a kiddo won't think twice about charging them, and they'll throw them on their iPhone charger, and then that's the wrong voltage for this little device, and then danger ensues. But that hairy tongue, I like to tell our teen kids, no one is going to kiss you when you look like that. If that's not deterrent enough, I don't know what is.
What kind of reaction do you get? You said this is when you lose them. I would think this is right exactly when you pull them back in. Like,
Well, it's when they are just like, oh, like they don't even want to look at the screen anymore.
well, if this isn't a deterrent, I don't know what else would be. Jim, talk to us a little bit about the signs of vaping, things that we might, as parents, be able to pick up on when our kids are trying to obviously hide this from us.
Sure, and I think that's so important because kids do a really good job of hiding these apes because they definitely didn't want mom or dad to know that they're doing it. So let's say you walk into the room and you find something that you just don't know what it looks like or what it is. So you're unfamiliar with it as well too. You notice that your son or daughter, their anxiety has increased as well too. Maybe their depression, because we know that nicotine does play on the brain for anxiety and depression, and for individuals that have an undiagnosed mental health condition as well too. They're really thirsty because that e-juice has a lot of flavoring in it because it dries their mouth out as well too. We also know that they're cutting back on that caffeine because, again, when they take that nicotine's a stimulant. So their brain's already firing like 10,000 miles an hour. So they don't need that caffeine to get them the wake they need as well too. You also notice that they'll be receiving more things from Amazon or other online products as well too. And what's interesting is a lot of those online services, there's no way for they don't verify the person's age as well too. We also talked about that faint sweet or fruity sensation or smell. So, like a great example, one of the deans at the high schools always makes this comment that his kid is an athlete, and he says, "I'm really concerned if my kid who's an athlete comes home and he smells like roses instead of smells like a normal teenage boy." And I agree with that as well too, right? Because again, most of these flavors that these adolescents are using are a fruity flavor as well too. And we also
Hey
talked about
Jim,
no,
and
yeah,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know that you would know the difference. But as a mom of a teenage girl, they like to put on their Bath and Body Works stuff too.
Right.
So maybe
And
identifying the difference between what that smells
sure.
like and
Yep. Yep. Great question. I think, and Stacey can help me, I think it smells more like a chemical smell, and it's a lot more sweeter
okay.
than Bed Bath and Beyond. It has a very like, have you ever smelled something you're like, this is a fake smell, like a fake rose smell or fake cucumber smell.
Okay.
That's kind of what, Stacey, do you agree?
Yeah,
It's
I
like
absolutely agree.
yeah, it's a very distinct fake smell.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does
and
that
they're
make
going to be
sense?
more candy
Yeah,
smells. I mean,
like
and of course
Fruit
right now,
Loops. Yeah.
yes,
Mm.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
definitely.
and something else to think about is those of us that have been to college, there's the old college trick where you take the toilet paper roll and you take the Bounty. And a lot of times kids will be smoking in their room and they'll blow the vape into the toilet paper roll and it'll go through the Bounty. So mom and dad can't smell it, or they'll take a towel and kind of pad the bottom of the door, then put Bounty on top of it so that vape smell doesn't go out of their room as well too. We also talk about the nosebleeds as well, and as Stacy said, all those chemicals they dry up the mucous membranes of the nose as well too. Also, they could also have maybe their lips bleeding as well too because of all those chemicals causing the mucosal layers of the lips to get very dry as well too. And again, as I mentioned, that oral herpes as well too.
Yeah. We're also seeing a lot of acne, which,
That's a good one.
we hate to see that, right? They're losing a lot of their taste
Mhm.
buds. And then some other signs that you might not think about is maybe they have new friends because they are hanging out with a different crowd. They're using a little
Oh,
bit more slang. Yep.
And
okay.
something else I think that a lot of people don't know is when the teenager goes to the dentist after the hygienist cleans their teeth, the hygienist knows if the person is vaping, right? Because he or she will be able to see maybe the discoloration of the teeth, maybe vape burns on their teeth as well too. Then when that dentist comes in to do an oral exam, the dentist is definitely going to see, hey, why does this person have leukoplakia, which is a type of oral cancer in their mouth, or why is the top of their mouth burn because of the heat from the vape as well too. So there's other things that are other factors that we may not be able to see, but a dentist will be able to a dentist or hygienist will be able to see those other symptoms as well and signs.
So another good reason to take the kid to the dentist. Pull the
Very much
dentist aside
so.
at the end and ask him what they saw.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And real quick with the dentist thing, vapes actually, when they vape, what happens is the chemicals get rid of the enamel that's on the teeth, and we're only born with this much of enamel, and when that enamel's gone, then your teeth are subject to whatever as well too, and a lot of kids don't know that as well.
All right, Jim, we're looking at a picture of what maybe a
Yep.
typical teenager room would look like. Um, and sometimes we'll see things and may not even think about what they could mean or be used for. So kind of walk us through some of the things in this room that should be a red flag for a parent.
Sure. Well, number one, this is not usually a normal teenager's room because it's clean. So this is a clean teenager's room, right? And if you notice, there's a lot of stuff in here that is for substance abuse and also for vaping as well too. Probably everybody's familiar with the 420. That's the big, marijuana date in April as well too. You can, you can see the vape as well too. And I know, hey Tammy, can you take your pointer and point under the 420 sign where
Right here.
yep, yep. So those are some things to think about. You can see the vape there, it's there. Then if you go towards the zero, yeah. So those are things that actually hide the vapes in. And what you can see is Tammy has it under the 420. You unscrew it, and you actually hide them in there as well too. And I actually have some that some administrators have given me. I have a Mountain Dew can, and also I have a Coca-Cola as well too. And we also talked about earlier at the very beginning the tank vapes, and this is a picture of the tank vape as well too. So the black one with the vape juice with it as well too. Then at the very bottom, we see that's a book, and again that's a
It's in here.
place
It is
for.
right here.
Yep,
Yeah, which looks like a
exactly.
book.
Yep, and you can actually it's a fake book, so it's hollow. And what they do is they stick their vape or their joint in it as well too. And you also see the T-shirt as well too. DC that means Dab City, and Dab is basically vaping marijuana as well too. And what's also really scary is a lot of this stuff is sold on Amazon, just like the shaving cream to hide your keys in as well.
Yeah.
So you may say that, oh yeah, they're going to hide their keys in this, but they're not hiding keys in it. Another one to be kind of looking out for, and I have this that I show parents, is a toothbrush case. So, like those old toothbrush cases you get at like Walmart or Meijer, where there are
Yeah.
two pieces and you stick the vape in, you can stick the toothbrush in and you put the two ends together. I have one of those and I have a vape in that. So again, and I hate to say this, and I say this a lot to parents when I do drug classes, you kind of have to get in your kid's business to see what's going on. And if you find something and you don't know what it is, you need to ask. Or you need to call, or you need to dig or call Stacy or myself, and we can kind of help you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stacy,
absolutely.
I thought these stats were actually pretty interesting. The kids find themselves vaping. They realize they're addicted. They want to quit.
They want to quit. They want to quit, and by the time that they get to the point where they want to quit, they're well into the depths of addiction and cannot do it themselves. One of the schools that I met with recently, they said that the highest time of day when they're seeing those vape detectors trigger is lunchtime. So your student has been in the school building for four hours. They need their hit. Jim says often, if you cannot go 5 minutes when you wake up without hitting your vape, that's addiction. But they do. They want to quit. And, a lot of these facts come straight from the CDC. These kids, they're really concerned about their health. The messaging is getting through to them. They're concerned about their health. They're concerned about the consequences, anywhere from, grounding, paying a fee, suspended, losing their activity, the privilege of being on a club or a team, letting their friends down in that case, knowing how something on their record could affect their chances at college and at future jobs. They want to quit. And so that's why we're here, is to create programming to help them quit. So to help as a parent, I always say, and as the mom of a teen, I know you'll agree, constant open communication. And that cannot start when they're 16. That has to start when they're young. You have to have them in that mindset. We are seeing a lot of studies where our kids, unfortunately, have lost a lot of their attention span thanks to TikTok. So think about making a TikTok, not making a video, but having a TikTok length conversation with your child. Ask them one question. Do not expect that conversation to last longer than 90 seconds. But if it's constant, if it's concise, and if it's, you're consistent, eventually your kiddo is going to open up to you. Talk to them, support them, don't scold them. I remember when I first became a mother, someone gave me the best advice I've ever heard. When your child is in the throes of a temper tantrum, it's like someone has fallen into a body of water, do you stand there and yell at them for not being able to swim, or do you first help them out of the water, make sure they're safe and warm and dry, and then talk about staying safe the next time? You've got to rescue your kid from that moment. You've got to rescue your kid from the depths of their addiction before you can start to lay on them about, the poor choices that they made.
Yeah, and we were talking about this the other day too. You can't just tell them to quit. It's
No,
not that easy.
absolutely not. Yeah, if it was that easy, we wouldn't have the substance abuse problems that we have all over the country, right? We wouldn't have the overdoses that we have. It is a true addiction, and thankfully there are a lot of programs out there ready to help. But your kid needs to be ready to ask for help. Just like with any other addict, forcing them into a program is really not going to do it either. So you guys need to come together to the conclusion together that they are ready to quit, and then you bring them to the help that's available. It also helps that you're modeling the positive behavior that you want to see in them. So remove those products from your home. You quit as well. If you are smoking, if you are vaping, quit together. Make that pact together. We see so many times, unfortunately, when a school confiscates a vape item, the adult in the home says, well, that's mine, you got to give it back to me, that was mine. So kiddo is learning and seeing that at home, and that's the number one place where they're going to get the support to quit.
And quitting isn't just something, again, that can happen overnight. You just really need to work on creating some sort of plan. And there are options and places to help you do that.
Yes, absolutely. You need to remind yourself why you want to quit. You need to remind yourself of the things that you can put in place to help you quit. So you've got to substitute that hand to mouth habit, that the taste fixations that you're having, those. So we suggest a lot of cinnamon, right, Jim?
Mhm.
I suggest a lot of those old fashioned lollipops that are like two different colors, right? And then the straw is plastic. Those dissolve really quickly. And then you've got that plastic hollow straw, which almost just gives you something to breathe through, which is going to be very similar to that smoking motion. You want to make sure to really look at where they're vaping and smoking. So I think about a former cigarette smoker. I mean, the number one place that people smoke is in their car, right? Driving to work. So we need to find something to keep those hands busy at that point. I know so many former smokers that pick up knitting, pick up, a lot of handcrafts, which is just, a great positive way to pour your energy into something better.
Can I add
All
something to
right.
that? Can I add something to that real quick?
Yes,
And as
please.
Stacey was talking about, we know that a craving lasts for about 30 seconds. So what Stacey was saying, if we can do something for 30 seconds that's different to get our brain off of that craving, that's the best outcome.
And quitting is not going to be pretty, right, Jim?
No, it is not, right? So just like with any other type of substance that we have out there, from cocaine to heroin to fentanyl, whatever, those individuals have a hard time stopping those products. Same thing with nicotine was as well. And the withdrawals are really bad, right? Some things that we see is irritability, the mood changes, trouble sleeping. One of the best things that we tell people to do is drink tons and tons and tons of water because nicotine is water soluble and we can flush it out of the system as well too.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, as much water as we can drink, but just don't overhydrate yourself, right? So these are
Mhm.
some other things that we see for the nicotine withdrawals. Those headaches, those trouble sleeping as well too, the feeling restlessness as well too, that being cranky because remember, that brain's like, hey, I'm not getting this nicotine, so it's telling the body, hey, it needs it, and you're trying to fight the brain and not start vaping again as well too. The trouble concentrating as well too, feeling hungry all the time, that tiredness and depression, because this is a big change in that person's life as well too. And I'm a big fan, as kind of Stacey talked about, that there's different ways to stop. I'm a big fan of the cold turkey method. That's where you say, today on May 3rd, I'm going to stop and we're done. It's not like, hey, you know what, May 3rd came around, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to stop tomorrow. That's not how it works. May 3rd comes around, all of our products are gone. We throw them away. We start sucking on cinnamon sticks or suckers. because if we prolong it, there's always going to be a reason why for us to prolong that instead of saying, I'm going to stop today and do cold turkey.
Okay. Okay. Um, let's stop now for questions. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw those in the comment box. I know that Stacy and Jim are happy to answer any and all questions, and they're wonderful resources too, because they do spend time in the schools with our kids, and the kids talk to you guys. I mean, some of the stories you tell, it's interesting to me. Um, while we're waiting for some questions, Stacy, would you mind running us through this resource slide? Because there's lots of good information out there. If you just want to learn more about vaping as a
Of course.
parent, or you really want some resources to help them quit if you find out they are vaping.
Absolutely. And I do want to put in a plug tomorrow, along with the American Cancer Society, is the Great American Smokeout. And that is a campaign where we ask smokers for 24 hours, simply 24 hours, to not smoke. And that's just a reminder that quitting really is one day at a time. I think on average it takes 6 times to quit to really knock the habit out of your life.
Mm,
And I share that not as a way to, um, discourage someone from quitting, but to remind yourself that it's a constant minute by minute decision to stay smoke free, to get and to stay smoke free. And even if you have a second day one, that is okay because it's still day one. And that's better than thousand of smoking. So we have a lot of great resources available. I work hand in hand with the Indiana Department of Health. We are contracted through them to, Jennifer has a question. Is there a test for vape? So do you mean sort of like a breathalyzer? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Well, hey, Jennifer, I will tell you that a breathalyzer isn't going to show up with nicotine because we off gas it too fast. It would have to be in a urine screen.
mm,
Just because
mm.
when people vape, they off gas it so quickly. Just like, because like with alcohol is different because alcohol it's absorbed through the mucosal layers of the lungs, but with vaping, when they exhale it off, it's just off gas too quickly for the body to absorb that to do a vaporizer test or a breath test. So urine test is the best one to do for that. And if I'm not mistaken, some of the over-the-counter drug tests that people can purchase, I think nicotine is one of those options as well too.
Oh,
Yeah, I believe you're correct. And I think marijuana as well, right?
Yeah, very much
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Um, okay, thanks, Jennifer. So that is a good question, because that's something I'm curious about. I know a lot of high schools in the area, they breathalyze at football games to gain entry, right? And I would love to see something similar, but obviously we can't pull everyone's hair as they're walking through the gates. So, we just have to keep working at the best ways to get out there. And the best way really is just to educate on prevention and cessation. And so, with Breathe Easy, we partner with Quit Now Indiana. We have a new teen and vape program there called Ditch Vape. Lots of great options up there on the screen. Parents Against Vaping is a really fantastic program as well. And if you have a teen that is really, loving the tobacco-free lifestyle and wants to support the tobacco-free lifestyle and support their peers and friends, we have a program where we partner with the state called Voice, and that's a youth advocacy group where we go out to the high schools and encourage them to get or stay tobacco free. We go down to the state house to advocate for better policy on vape and tobacco, especially where our kids are involved. But Jim and I are always available. That's my phone number, my email there on the screen. Especially if you are in a situation where maybe your student is found vaping and you're not sure what's going to come next for them. I'm happy to walk through with any parent on that because it's definitely scary to get that phone call because at the end of the day, whether it's just nicotine or it's marijuana, and I don't want to say just nicotine, but nicotine or marijuana, it's illegal for anyone under 21, and that could have some serious legal repercussions, in along with those health repercussions, and we're happy to walk through that with you, as partners.
Yeah, and I've also put up both Jim and Stacy's contact information. Again, both of them more than happy and willing and able to talk to you offline after this presentation. Are we seeing any other questions, Jim?
Nope, we don't see anything at all.
Okay. Well, as promised, here's a look at our last webinar of the year. It's a little early because of the holidays. We'll be doing it on December 11th. We're going to be talking about lead poisoning, how to tell if your child has been exposed, how to test for lead in your home, and then how to mitigate it if you find out that you do have lead in your home. If you're interested in participating in this webinar, you can just log on to the Hamilton County Health Department. You'll look for the Health Education tab and then click on the Children's Webinar button. Again, we want to thank you all for coming tonight, joining us. I'm going to put up their contact information one last time in case you weren't able to write this down or take a screenshot of it. We thank you all for coming, sharing your
Tammy, hold on
evening
just
with
a
us.
second.
Oh, okay.
Jennifer's writing something.
All
Or I
right.
should say typing something.
And,
So
and Hillary just gave us a round of applause, so thank you, Hillary.
Thank you,
Hi,
Hillary.
hi, Hillary. I know Hillary.
Oh,
Hillary's a teacher. She's a health teacher.
Oh, fantastic. We will be, this was recorded. We will be sharing this on our social media channels, the health department's social media channels tomorrow. Stacy, I'm sure that you guys would be happy to share those to your channels as well. So if somebody didn't make it tonight that you knew might have been interested, or you just want to share it with somebody that you think could benefit from it, please feel free to do that. We'll, like I said, post that in the morning. Do we have a?
Tammy, Jennifer just said thank you for holding these sessions.
Well, we appreciate you guys attending, and